Tonight is about love in honor of Valentine's Day. We've got 5 speakers tonight, 2 couples, and a couples counselor who will share their stories of falling in love, secrets for how to make love last, and more fun stories about romance. Lily Russo and Oliver Scott-Tomlin met in a tree down in Mexico and fell in love. Somewhere along the way, you guys made it to Southwest Colorado, and I'm sure you'll tell us about that journey. They'll share their stories also of falling in love and how they continue keeping their passion alive.
So I met Lily in Mexico, but I think I first need to tell you the story of how I actually got to Mexico, because you can probably hear from my accent that that's not really where I'm from. So originally I'm from South Africa, and when I was 26 I moved to the UK because that's where my family is from, and I studied there. I started a business there, which went very, very well, and I was there for about 12 years. During that time, I started a business that did property in London, and I did business with the UN, with the United Nations, which was a lot of travel. And it looked for a very long time that myself and my ex-wife were building this empire, and things were going really, really good, up until a point where it stopped making sense for me. It no longer made sense to wear a tie, to put a suit on, to get up in the morning on a crowded train, and to go in and do a job that I no longer believed in. So I kind of started to drift off a little bit, and some people may call it a spiritual awareness, or something bigger was calling me within myself. And as it transpired, I ended up leaving my business, leaving my wife at the time, and I ended up in Mexico. And the reason I ended up in Mexico is I started seeing a Mexican lady, and we had plans to go and develop a community in Mexico, to go and live somewhere in the mountains and live sustainably, and kind of walk my talk a little bit. So I took a circuitous route to Mexico. Along the way, I stopped in the States for a couple of years, did a firewalk training, became a certified firewalk instructor, which I then took to Mexico, and with my then partner, we were running retreats, we were doing firewalks, we were doing other things, and I kind of morphed out of the suit and tie and was more kind of bandana and feathers, and went a little bit tribal, got all the tattoos. I ended up splitting up with my then partner, and I was at this very pregnant point in my life where it was, okay, well, I can do whatever I want to now. I could go back to the UK, I could go back to South Africa, and I kind of started exploring all these different venues and thinking, what do I want to create for my life? And I was doing the very masculine thing, like, got to make a decision, got to get, let's go. And I got a great piece of advice from the lady who was teaching me Spanish, because I'd been there for a couple of years and I didn't speak a word of Spanish. So I kind of decided to learn, and obviously I would tell her about all the issues I was going through and everything, and she said to me, why don't you just wait? Why don't you just do nothing? Why don't you just keep doing what you're doing, stay here for a bit, don't make any decisions, see what life throws up to you. And I was like, oh, I can't do that. I got to make a decision, got to do something. And I actually decided to take her up on this. So I stopped making any plans. I went looking, I went house hunting. I went to look for a little place where I could stay. I was in a little town called Tepoztlan, which is just south of Mexico City. Very arty, very beautiful town. Got a Mayan pyramid, lots of art, lots of culture there. And I went to look at this house the one day, and I wasn't really interested in the house. There was somebody else there, and they were clearing out the people's stuff beforehand. And I'm doing a cursory sort of glance at everything, and I look up in this tree, and there's this incredible goddess swinging in the tree. So of course I see nothing else now. I'm just captivated by this, and you can imagine this. There was a silk in this little town in Mexico, this little ramshackle shack, and there's this awesome tree and this beautiful silk hanging out of it, and there's Lily doing these amazing moves, and I kind of hung around watching, pretending to be interested in what they were showing me and doing this, but really riveted what was going on there. And then I noticed that she was stuck in the tree. She had dropped the silk down because they were taking it away, and she couldn't get down. So I hightailed it up the tree, got to the base, scurried up the tree like this, and I helped her down.
I pretended I couldn't get down.
Well, I'm going to let you take it from here.
I'll tell you why I was in the tree. So I also arrived in Mexico under somewhat similar circumstances. I had gone through a breakup recently, and I was living here in Durango before then. And, you know, it's a sort of small town to have a breakup. So I went traveling. I actually traveled in Guatemala with my brother, and we had a wonderful time. And then I was on my own traveling. I was in Mexico, and I didn't have any plans to return anytime. I was in this really cool town. Tepoztlan is like this little, it's similar to Durango, a little smaller. It's in the mountains. It's got cobblestone streets and colorful markets, and I thought I would stay there for a while. I was couch surfing at the time, and the man who was letting me stay on his couch literally took me to this house because his friend was moving out, and I was going to help them move some stuff out. I ended up in this tree because there was this silk hanging down, and I had been doing these great classes in Durango. It's called aerial acrobat or aerial dancing in these silks. So I was playing around on these silks. I didn't plan to spend so much time up there as I did, but Oliver walked in, and I stayed because I was totally just taken by him. He didn't look like this. I think he looks amazing now, and he's obviously very handsome, but I just want to paint a picture of how he was then. He walks in, and he is wearing a long blue sarong, a embroidered Guatemalan-type vest with nothing underneath his open just chest. He had feather earrings. He had long hair, and it was tied back. And it was like shaved at the back. And he had this like orange bandana, and he had no shoes. And he was like the most exotic thing. And you might not be able to tell right now, but he's really tall. He's like 6'4", and he's really strong. So he walks in like this, and I'm in this tree like, whoa, who is that guy? So I started showing off a little bit. And then when the guy said we could take that silk, if I could get it down, I went up, I untied the knot, I threw it down, and then I sort of like pretended that I couldn't get down. So I was looking down, looking at him, looking down, and then he finally caught the drift, and he ran over, and he helped me down, and so that's how we met in the tree.
And our first date that we went to the cinema, and very much like you guys, on the drive to our first date, we hadn't even got to the cinema yet. We were already going to the beach the following week for 2 weeks on the beach. So things moved pretty quickly.
He said, I'm going to the beach next week. Do you want to come on vacation with me? And I was like, yes. So we did. And that's where we fell in love and pretty much never parted since then.
And we ended up in Durango because we actually flew back to fetch Lily's car because we were going to move her car and all her stuff down there, and we were going to stay in Mexico for a little bit. We were going to set up shop there. And we came up here. Well, we ran a firewalk at a friend's house of yours, and just this amazing community turned up. Really awesome bunch of people. We ran this firewalk, and I suddenly realized that this was everything that I was looking for. We now have a little boy, Leo, who's 1.5, absolutely amazing. We have one of the most amazing relationships. I think that, honesty and trust and pulling in the same direction are one of the things that we practice, and definitely shows benefits.
If we're looking for keys to a happy relationship that he's taught me, and you guys mention it too, which is to really just let things go. Every time we have an argument, we just decide that it's not worth really keeping it going for very long at all. So usually within a very short time, we just come to each other, one or the other, and we just say, let's just let it go.